Gopijanavalabha Girivaradhari Gopijanavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Nativa Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vijanavalabha Girivaradhari Vijanavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Nativa Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Madhava Kunjavihari Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha, Jaya Radha Samasundara Samasundara, Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Nitya Hare 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 Nitya Hare Abhachan Bhakti Swami Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Iskan Pandacharya Divange Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Yogi Shri Paramahamsa Parivachikacharya Sutra Sudakshi Shri Divange Shri Bhakti Swami Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Anand Giri Vaishnava ki jai, Namacharya Shri Vidas Thakur ki jai, Prince Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sri Gaura Bhakta Ki Jai Shri Shiva Hare Krishna Gopal Shyam Kanda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktavan Ki Jai Gandharajman Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Nitai Gauravanande. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories, Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories, Shri Prabhupada Ki.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome. Just a sound check. How's my audio? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All good, thank you very much. So today we're going to cover, we're going to revise verses 1 to 3, and also we're going to cover verses 4 to 8. So let us do the Mangala charan, as well as we will recite some of the important verses for today. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuveva cha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarvashastra Viyusha Sarva Vedika Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Dhritprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kali Dvando Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churn from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophic conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varsha Shurayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer my respectful obeisances unto you. By reading you, one attains transcendental bliss, for your syllables rains pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are an incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madekabando Matsangim Madguru Manmahadana Manishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Asadu sadhu tadahi natini chochataraka hanamunchakada chinmam premna ritkatayo spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O giver of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplifted of the very fallen, please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in my heart and my throat, accompanied by pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we'll recite these verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yatonvayaditaratas chartesvabhigna swarat tene brahma hidayadikavaye muhyanti yatsuraya tejo varimrudam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha damna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destructions of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusive representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested. By the reactions of the three modes of material nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpayusha sabhya kalavasmin yuge jana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrita. O learned man, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayana namaskritya narancheva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai pumsa paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaje ahayutiki apratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayat Yasu Vairagyam Gnanam Chayat Ahayutukem Kam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti tattvasvidas tattvam yajnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma or Bhagavan. Shushrushroshradhanasya vasudeva kata ruchi syan mahat sevaya vipra punyatirtha nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service one attains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana redyantastovya bhadrani vidunoti suritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma Supersoul in everyone's heart, and a benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from within the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in the classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're covering Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So let us have some feedback, both from the introduction as well as last week's verses, the prelude, verses 1 to 3. I did receive 2 questions from Mother Lash. So she asked, first question, please provide Krishna Leela for each of the 12 rasas revealed in scriptures so I can understand this better. The primary rasas are easier to understand, but the indirect rasas are not so clear, and I gave her references to nectar devotion. So those of you who may have not finished Bhakti Shastri, naturally Bhagavatam is ideal to study after after Bhakti Shastri, which means you've gone through Bhagavad Gita, Nectar Devotion, Shri Ishopanishad, and Nectar Instruction. And in Nectar Devotion, the rasas are extensively covered. Why? Because Bhakti Ras, everything about Bhakti Ras, the law book of Bhakti is Nectar of Devotion. And the playlist for all the recordings of Nectar Devotion is on the Chaitanya Life Academy YouTube channel. So you're most welcome to also go there and review that or share that to those that would like access to the Nectar Devotion series, Bhagavad Gita and Shri Shopanishad. We'll upload the Bhagavad Gita, but Shri Shopanishad, Nectar Instruction, and Nectar Devotion is definitely still there. All right. And we'll also be touching on this on her second question during this session, which was why are the rasas exchanged between members of the same species only? Why can't a rasa be exchanged between man or animal or any other being in the material world? Why can't men show mercy or daya to animals? So we will speak about that during our session as well. All right. Any other feedback? Anybody would like to share, please unmute and share if you like, or type what you took away from last week's session, what caught your attention, what you found very interesting, what you want to remember and take deep within your consciousness and heart, or if there are any questions that you have. Those of you that are on YouTube, you can also please type in your questions on the channel as well. We'll give you a few minutes. Any feedback? I'm sure you took away something. So this aspect of sharing feedback, sharing something you've read, something that caught your attention, caught your heart, is a key aspect in Krishna consciousness. Bodha yanta parashparam. We come together and we share realization, share what we heard, etc. So it's a very important principle, and we're going to be covering that also today in one of Srila Prabhupada's purports. So therefore, I'm putting some time on this. Tanuja, you want to share something online?
God. It's helping me a lot, Prabhu. It's helping me a lot, especially now that Marge is also going through Brihad Bhagavatamrita.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's sort of a whole overview that I'm getting all at once. So like
Yes.
From your side, a whole overview, and then a little bit more in depth with Marge. So it's making a whole lot more sense.
Nice. Wonderful.
Then yeah.
Correct. So Brihad Bhagavatamrita is generally after, even though it's a wonderful narration by Narad Muni on Gopakumar's journey, it's generally said that after the Bhagavatam, then you get Brihad Bhagavatams, like the Canto 13. Right? So that's also very interesting. Actually, a very amazing Brihad Bhagavatamrita covers many, many amazing philosophical points both in terms of the greatest devotees as well as those who have the greatest mercy to give. Yeah.
Somebody.
Ramkingar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Nishyananda Prabhu,
Hare
please
Krishna.
accept my humble
Jai, please
obeisances.
accept mine.
All glories to
Jai.
Prabhupada and all the assembled Vaishnavas. I really appreciated the three aspects of bhakti, Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojana.
Yes.
You linked it to the deities of Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govinda, and Radha Gopinath.
Yes.
Many years ago in the temple room at Sri Radhanath, His Holiness Niduma Swami introduced these three deities of Vrindavan. So, but I like how you philosophically linked it from Shastra. It makes a whole new meaning to understanding these principal deities of Vrindavan. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, and all credits don't go to me. All credits go to our previous acharyas who have. We basically all I'm doing is I'm trying to read and trying to share. This is no realization on my part. So yes, you could say the credit goes to me as a postman. You know, a insignificant postman, but the full credit goes to our previous acharyas and Srila Prabhupada who really shared these divine jewels of wisdom to us. So thank you very much. So we had a few comments on the chat. Actually, a few of them, right? Wonderful. The relationship between, so Bafana, please put your, it's nice when a devotee join, try to put your name in so that it's, we can obviously know who joined as well. The relation between Sukadeva Goswami and Srimati Radharani was very blissful and sublime. You can elaborate briefly, please. So, both, so in the spiritual world, Krishna and Srimati Radharani have parrots. They have each have parrots, some of them, and they also have specific unique parrots, cows, deers, different animals. So Krishna has his favorite parrot, Srimati Radharani has her favorite parrot as well. And Sukha is Radharani's parrot. So when Krishna comes to this material world to perform his leelas, then his associates, including all their pets, spiritual pets, also appear. Their associates all appear in this world. And Sukha also came 5,000 years ago because Vrindavan is the spiritual world. So all the associates are there. And when they left, just before Kali Yuga started, back to the spiritual world, Krishna asked Sukha to stay behind so that he could perform this pastime as Sukadeva Goswami to share the nectar of the Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna, we need to hear Srimad Bhagavatam with submissiveness and sincerity. Yes, very, very important. That will be recapped again in today's lessons. With the Gayatri Mantra, one enters the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Yeah, Gayatri Mantra is there to purify us so that we can become qualified. Just by learning Srimad Bhagavatam, we know all the Vedic literatures. Correct. I really liked the way the first three verses were linked to Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojana. Yes, as was mentioned, the three Goswamis deities, it made it more understandable. I thought it was a wonderful meditation. Very good. How also each deity is related to its speaker. If you said a speaker, but some extent you explained deities worshipped as you were going. Please help. You explained daily worship as you were going. Please help. So clarify if there is a question there. Hare Krishna, I liked how Bhakti Siddhanta spoke 3 months on the verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, first verse, and also Srila Prabhupada gave everything in the first 2 cantos. So Srila Prabhupada gave everything in the first 2 cantos. Prabhupada gave everything in the first canto and everything in the first 3 verses. And in fact, you could say everything in the first verse. All Vedic knowledge in the first 3 verses, correct? The verses have helped to awaken our love for the Lord, purifying our hearts at the same time, correct? Material world is like a mirage in the desert. Wonderful, yes. So these points are very important to recap, and in today's session we will also hear why this is key and why this is important. Thank you very much for all your feedback. Let us proceed. So I'm going to share an interesting point in relation to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bhagavad Gita starts with "you not the body." You're a spiritual being. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So that's where Bhagavad Gita starts, on the basis of spirit. Beyond matter, beyond all other uh, materially motivated or even materially designated scriptures, and starting on the platform of spirit. And it ends at the perfection of dharma, perfection of religion, where Krishna says, "Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear." So it starts with spirit and ends at full surrender to the Supreme Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam starts, Prujita Kaitava, starts at completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. So where Bhagavad Gita ended, Srimad Bhagavatam starts. Therefore, you'll find that in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not starting with "you're not this body, you're spirit, soul." That was already in Bhagavad Gita. Now it's starting at the point of full surrender to Krishna, pure devotional service, the standard of that, the qualities of that, how to achieve that. So the whole of the Bhagavatam is focused on this aspect of parodharma, the ultimate perfection, the ultimate duty of every living being. And it ends at the holy name. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Supreme Lord, Hari, the congregational chanting of whose holy names destroy all sinful reactions, and the offering of obeisances unto whom relieves all material suffering. So it starts with paradharma, and it then propounds the glories of paradharma, which culminates in chanting the holy name as the perfection of all dharmas. Or you could say that the epitome, the climax of the perfection of pure devotional service, which is in this age especially chanting the holy names. And the last verse of Srimad Bhagavatam concludes at this point. So it begins at Paradharma and ends at holy name. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we know how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in this world with everyone bathing in the Ganges during the eclipse, chanting Hari Hari. And the Lord also made the villagers in Nadia chant the holy name right as he appeared in this world through his crying. And the only way to make him stop crying is chanting the holy names of the Lord. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's explained, "I take shelter of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is outwardly of a fair complexion, but is inwardly Krishna himself. In this age of Kali, he displays his expansions, his angas and upangas, by performing congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord." So Srimad Bhagavatam starts at Paradharma, ends at the holy name. Chaitanya Charitamrita starts at the holy name and ends with Shashtakam prayers. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives right at the end of his pastimes in the Gambhira, he gives the Shashtakam prayers, and the final conclusion of these prayers, Ashdisha Vapadam Ranal Ratam Pinastomam Ardarshanam Maram Kahato Karoto Va Yatha Tatha Va Vidato Lampato Mat Prananatastu Sevanapara. And the translation Prabhupada gives in this specific verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita: "Let Krishna tightly embrace this maid servant who has fallen at his lotus feet. Oh, let him trample me or break my heart by never being visible to me. He is a debauchee after all and can do whatever he likes, but still he alone and no one else is the worshipful Lord of my heart." And this verse is actually spoken by Srimati Radhavani. And it's revealing the perfection, the epitome, the highest glory of pure devotional service, which is I will do anything for the pleasure of the Lord, even if it causes me great pain, even if He is if he handles me roughly by his embrace, still he is always my worshipper Lord. So this is the climax of pure devotional service in the mood of and the heart of Srimati Radharani. So very wonderfully, these three scriptures are linked, where Bhagavad Gita starts and ends, Srimad Bhagavatam starts and then ends with the holy name. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita starts with the holy name and ends with Srimati Radharani's love. So the first three verses, as we said, is a prelude. Srila Prabhupada says is a prelude, which is called a Mangala charan. And Chaitanya Charitamrita describes, generally when scriptures are written, there is always a Mangala charan. Se Mangala charan hayatri vida prakara vastu nirdesha arshivard namaskara. So a Mangala charan generally has three parts. The invocation involves three processes: defining the objective, offering benediction, and offering obeisances. The first verse is describing the objective, and as well as the second verse, Krishna, the absolute truth, and Paradharma, and then offering of benedictions, and then obeisances. So in terms of the first verse, just to recap, this is describing the absolute truth, Sambandha, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srila Vyasadeva is offering obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavate Vasudevaya, who is the son of Vasudeva. And Prabhupada in the purport establishes that this is none other than the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, Shri Krishna. Janmadhyasya yato, the primal cause. Krishna is the primal cause of all causes of creation, maintenance and destruction of the manifested universes. Anvayad itarascharte abhigna. He directly and indirectly is conscious of all manifestations. Swarat is fully independent. Tene Brahma Hidaya Rikavya, first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji. So he is the source of all knowledge, including the knowledge of Lord Brahma. Muyanti Yat Suraya, even great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. So it's not that illusion is something separate, another, you could say, just like in Christianity, they talk about God and the devil. And devil is equal to but opposite God. That's not the case. Here there is God, and the inferior or the material energy that bewilders all the living entities is subservient to the Supreme Lord. It is his energies. And in fact, it is divine. Devi Yesugunamai. It is a divine energy. It is Krishna's energy. Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha. As one is bewildered by the illusory representation of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Then Vinimayo Yatratir Sargom Risha. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes, appear factual. Dhamna Swena Sada Nirastakokam, eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is free from illusion. So in this verse also we are hearing about another world, a spiritual world. That is the world that is free from illusion, and that's where the Supreme Lord resides. And in fact, that is where we need to return. Satyam Param Dhimahi. I meditate upon that absolute truth. So very, very wonderful. This verse establishes the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of everything. Now, this verse is key, it's foundational, and is very important. And throughout our life, we should contemplate on this verse and see how this verse is relevant to our life. And I like to share this picture, which is a picture of a bowl of sprouts. And the question is, what does this bowl of sprouts have to do with this verse? What does this bowl of sprout have to do with this verse? So while you're typing, and if you want, you can also unmute and share. On the YouTube, Hemendra also shared, Hare Krishna, we learned that Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us in 3 ways: instruct like a master, instructs like a friend, and instructs like a compassionate lover. Yes, wonderful. So Nalini Kanta said, like our bhakti creepers. So Nalini Kanta Prabhu, in relation to this specific verse, what does the sprout? How can you relate this specific verse? So try to focus on what the verse is sharing. The first verse, it's sharing about the absolute truth. How is that connected to the sprouts, or how are the sprouts connected to that verse? So you could take it further in terms of the sprouts are like the bhakti creeper, and our connection is to the Supreme Lord, because bhakti is the connection between the living entity and the sprouts. So that way it's connected, right? Very good. Signifies growth. So again, try to connect, try to give a little more detail. Mother Janavi also signify growth. Growth in what way, and growth, what does growth have to do with this specific verse of the absolute truth? So always try to connect it to the specific verse. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to be more specific. How is it connected to statement number 1? Janmadhyasyeto. You can unmute, it's easier to speak. Entails Sambandha Abhidya Prajna? No. Created by Krishna ultimately. Correct. Right? So that's how the sprouts are related to this verse. The sprouts are created by Krishna. Why? Because Janmadhyasayato. Krishna is the primal cause of all creation, maintenance, and destruction. He's the cause of all causes. So everything that we can see, that we can experience, can be related to this verse in different ways. And that's the focus. That's why we're learning and associating with Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam wants to reveal this truth. It's the beginning of creation. In relation to the, so you could say it's first part, yes, creation, which is the beginning, then there's maintenance, then there's destruction. So the seed will sprout further. That could be also connected. Yeah. But the real connection is that it's the source of the sprouts is Krishna. The source of all our abilities is Krishna. And I'll share another way Srila Prabhupada saw the sprouts. So the devotees, the one devotee was cooking, and she was making the sprouts in the kitchen. And Prabhupada entered the kitchen. And when Prabhupada entered the kitchen and he saw the sprouts, Srila Prabhupada looked at the sprouts and told her, ensure that every sprout, every seed is sprouted, so that we can offer all the sprouts, every sprout to Krishna, because every seed is a spirit soul, and we don't want to exclude any spirit soul. We want to engage and connect every spirit soul to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. So that's how Prabhupada saw the sprouts. Right? He could understand the sprouts are spirit souls, and Krishna is the absolute truth. We need to connect to the absolute truth. Therefore, he gave that instruction. Make sure that every seed is sprouted. Don't leave out every seed. So Prabhupada's compassion, Prabhupada's vision was, he wasn't just seeing a bowl of sprouts. He was seeing a bowl of spirit souls that now can be connected to Krishna in devotional service. And don't exclude any spirit soul. Don't leave out any spirit soul. Make sure everyone is connected to Krishna, because we are all part and parcel. So that's how Prabhupada saw this bowl of sprouts. Glorious. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, and I mentioned that there are many ways of seeing this verse. So here I'm sharing 5 verses or 5 ways that Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur interprets this verse. And you'll see this is interpretation 1, or yeah, you could say commentary on this verse 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the same different statements that I just read. And what I'm going to do is, to save time, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to read them downwards, each one, so you'll get an idea of the different ways of understanding this verse and the depth of the Bhagavatam. There could be infinite number of ways that we could extract wisdom, knowledge, and truth about Krishna from these verses. So regarding the absolute truth, the first understanding, absolute truth is transcendental. The cause of creation, and this one is similar to what Srila Prabhupada has given. The cause of creation maintains in destruction of the universe, the material and efficient cause, the only knower of all objects. So the absolute truth is the only knower of all objects, the only independent being, revealed the Vedas to Brahma within his mind, difficult to understand even for the learned. His body is thought to be made of matter due to illusion, just as one mistakes fire, water, and earth for each other. He negates all false arguments regarding his existence by possessing a transcendental, inconceivable form, by the strength of the devotees experiencing him through his Swarup Shakti. Let us meditate upon the absolute truth, Krishna. So that whole verse basically describes more directly the absolute truth is transcendental. Then the second understanding is describing Krishna's form, who after appearing in Vasudev's house went to Nandamaja's house, knowing how to cheat Kamsa and knowing the appearance of his devotees Prem in Vraja, remained there because of his own people, though he is ever independent, revealed to Brahma that the boys and calves were actually the Supreme Brahman, which bewilders even persons such as Narada, whose body, though appearing to be material to the demons, is not temporary at all. Through his abode, Mathura, and by revelation of his form to his devotees, destroy ignorance concerning himself. Let us meditate upon Krishna, who is known as Satya. So now that translation was describing Krishna's form. This one now is describing, the same verse is describing conjugal rasa, from whom arises Madhurya rasa through meeting and separation. Most skillful in everything related to rasa, is beyond the material realm, who conveyed to Bharat Muni the same Madhurya rasa, about which other poets are bewildered, in whom alone arises the 3 types of literary meaning in extraordinary form, who defeats the withered argues by the extraordinary influence of the experience of Madhurya rasa. Let us meditate on Krishna. The next one gives us translation of Radha and Krishna together, from whom arises the heights of Madhurya rasa, by giving up the other gopis and following only her. As Dhira Lalita, he showed his expertise in the chief aspects of rasa. She exhibited herself as an independent lover. Krishna imparted through the heart to Sukadeva Goswami, knower of this rasa from birth, the Bhagavatam, by which the devotees faint in ecstasy and undergo transformation, just as fire and water and earth reverse their properties, by whose influence the 3 Shaktis remain eternally, without deceit, in correct manner, aspiring for the highest goal. We meditate on Radha and Krishna. And finally, the last translation gives meaning or glorifies Bhakti Yoga, which brings about the appearance of the Lord as Bhagavan in which there is realization of Brahman and Paramatma, Gyan Yoga processes, which is complete knowledge, independent of other processes, which was revealed by Narada to Vyas, is bewildering even to great sages, which is not mixed with the three gunas, which defeats his opponents by its very nature, by giving direct experience of bliss. Let us meditate on the most beneficial spiritual process which is beyond the gunas. So very, very beautiful. These are 5 different translations of the same verse, glorifying different aspects of the truth. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Vasudeva directly indicate Lord Shri Krishna, who is the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. This fact will be more explicitly explained in the text of this work. Srila Vyasadeva asserts herein that Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead and all others are his direct or indirect plenary portions or portions of portions. Srila Jiva Goswami has even more explicitly explained the subject matter in his Krishna Sandarbha. And Brahma, the original living being, has explained the subject of Shri Krishna substantially in his treatise named Brahma Samhita. In the Samaveda Upanishad, it is also stated that Lord Shri Krishna is the divine son of Devaki. Therefore, in his prayer, the first proposition holds that Lord Shri Krishna is the primal Lord. And if any transcendental nomenclature is to be understood as belonging to the absolute personality of Godhead, it must be the name indicated by the word Krishna, which means the all-attractive. So that last statement is key. Prabhupada is saying that if any transcendental nomenclature, if you had to classify all the names of God and give it some sort of structure, then the only name that you could allocate to the absolute personality of Godhead is indicated by the word Krishna, by the name Krishna, which means all attractive. In the purport to 10.90.47, there it is described. The name Krishna is superior to the name Narayan and to those of all of Lord Krishna's other expansions. These two syllables, Krish and Na, combine together to destroy all inauspiciousness and illusion. When recited, the name Krishna becomes Sutramata. That is to say, a recitation of Krishna's name totally crushes Matanati, the excellence of all other spiritual practices described in the revealed scriptures, Shruta. In the words of Brahmanda Purana, Sahasra Namanam Punyanam Trir Avritya tu Yat Phalam Ekavritya tu Krishnasya Na name kam tat prayachati. By utterance of the single name of Krishna just once, one attains the same benefit as that gained by reciting Lord Vishnu's 1,000 names 3 times. And in the Prabhasa Purana, it is described Lord Krishna personally tells Arjuna, of all my names, Krishna is the most important. So Krishna is the principal, primary name. It's like the initial name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the all-inclusive name. He's all-attractive. Therefore, Prabhupada focused and gave people the International Society for Krishna consciousness, not just God consciousness, but Krishna consciousness. If somebody says, who is God? It's Krishna. Who's the absolute truth? It is Krishna. So then we recap the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam that describes the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Abhideya, and the definition of Parodharma, real religion. So this Bhagavatam Srimad Bhagavate, Atra, therein is repeated thrice. Dharma Projita Kaitava completely rejects materially motivated religion, Dharma, Artha, Kam, and Moksha. And he propounds the highest truth, Parama Dharma, the highest form of Dharma, which is pure devotional service, unmotivated and uninterrupted pure devotional service. Nirmat Saranam Satam Pedyam is understood by devotees who are pure in heart, non-envious. Vastavam, verse 2, distinguishes the highest reality from illusion. Vastu means substance. It establishes the substance. In this material world, everything is shadow, everything is reflection. Real Vastu, real substance is Krishna. And if we understand that real substance to be Krishna, to be the absolute truth, and our connection with Him, then Shivadam, we become auspicious. Everything will be prosperous, will be peaceful, will be satisfying. We will be happy. There will be all auspiciousness, Shivadam. This Bhagavatam also, Tapa Trayon Mulanam, it uproots the threefold miseries. Mulanam, right at the root, it uproots. Mahamuni Krita is compiled by Vyasadeva in his maturity and is sufficient for God realization. Kim va pare. What is the need of any other scripture? So this one scripture can give us everything we require in terms of guidance, in terms of knowledge, in terms of what we should do, in terms of what we should aspire for, in terms of revealing examples of perfection. Everything is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is complete. We don't need anything else. It's amazing how there was a devotee, when she heard, Prabhupada always quotes this point, that everything in Srimad Bhagavatam, you don't need anything else. She really took this to heart, and she taught her two children simply to study Srimad Bhagavatam, and by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, they were groomed up to understand the absolute truth, Krishna consciousness, and even all other, you could say, mundane aspects. So, for example, like creation, about the material world, about the universe, all different elements. They learned everything just from studying Bhagavatam. They were homeschooled at home through Srimad Bhagavatam. And now the devotee, the children are, they study. One of them completed his PhD on Tata Sandarbha. He's practically a Sanskrit scholar, just on the basis of the knowledge from Srimad Bhagavatam. Then 7, Ishvara Sadhya Ridya Avaruddhya. The Supreme Lord is established within his heart at once. And this is the blessing, this is the Ashirvad, that if one associates with Srimad Bhagavatam, and how Kriti Bhi Shushrubis Tachanat. As soon as one attentively and submissively hears Srimad Bhagavatam. Attentive is key. We need to submissively hear, and we need to attentively hear. Attentively means we are focused, we are hearing the subject, we are trying to absorb the subject, trying to understand and assimilate the subject, and trying to apply the subject. When we do this, then Ishvara Sadhya Ridya Avaruddhyate. Krishna will be captured in our heart. Krishna will appear in our heart. So this was the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam in the second verse. So the question that I have is that we experience the threefold miseries. So those pure devotees of the Lord who are completely surrendered, dedicated to Srimad Bhagavatam and living Srimad Bhagavatam, then how is it and how can we understand point 5, Tapa Trayan Mulanam, that they are not experiencing the threefold miseries of life? Because we see, for example, now there may be exalted souls who have dedicated their life, just like Pankaj Jangri Prabhu and others who have dedicated their lives, yet they have COVID, yet they're experiencing one of the threefold miseries of lives, and in that case, many. So how do we understand? The question is, how do we understand this statement, Tapatra Trayan Mulanam, that by surrendering to Srimad Bhagavatam and by perfecting our lives through Srimad Bhagavatam, we will not experience the threefold miseries of life? What does that mean? Srila Prabhupada had many illnesses, and yet Srila Prabhupada was a walking Bhagavata. He gave us the Bhagavatam. He was living Bhagavatam. He was fully surrendered to Krishna. Yet, we see that he went through many forms of sufferings. So it seems like this statement doesn't seem true. Please share your comments. Mother Lesh said, your consciousness is elevated above the three miseries. You see everything from a transcendental perspective. Very good, Mother Lesh. You are perfectly on spot. That was exactly the point. It's not that you don't experience the threefold miseries. You experience the threefold miseries, but your experience is totally different. They say when you change your perspective on things, the things that you see changes. Your experience will be totally different from how mundane people experience. And that is the point. Prabhupada also said that yes, we can become free from the threefold miseries. How? When you perfect your life according to the Bhagavatam, if you follow the Bhagavatam and perfect your life according to the Bhagavatam, then you will achieve the perfection, the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You'll go back to the spiritual world. When you go back to the spiritual world, there is no birth, death, disease, and old age. There is no adibhotic and adhyatmic suffering. So Prabhupada said, therefore, it's just one more life you have to go through this. Then you experience these, you will not experience these three forms of suffering. While you in this world, then your experience will be totally different. As you mentioned, Srila Jiva Goswami said that suffering is the devotee's best friend. It allows us to think of Krishna. And in that regard, Prabhupada often quotes this verse from the 10th canto, 14th chapter, verse 8. This is the prayers that Lord Brahma offers to Lord Krishna. And I will share a link, and this, you can read this as homework. You can, I'll post this also on the YouTube channel for the others or in the WhatsApp group as well. There are many places where Srila Prabhupada quotes this specific verse, and Prabhupada says this is the guiding, this verse, Tate Nukampam, should become the guiding principle for devotees. So when we practice the Bhagavatam, we will get the strength and the empowerment to be able to see all our suffering through this verse. Srila Prabhupada in the 12th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, 12th chapter, verse 13 to 14, quotes this verse and says, a pure devotee is never disturbed in any circumstances, nor is he envious of anyone, nor does a devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks, quote, this person is acting as my enemy due to my own past misdeeds. So it is better to suffer than to protest. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8, it is stated, Tatenu kampam shishimakshamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam. Whenever a devotee is in distress or has fallen into difficulty, he thinks that it is the Lord's mercy upon him. He thinks, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I am suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that I am not getting all the punishment I am due. I am just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unquote. Therefore, he is always calm, quiet, and patient, despite many distressful conditions. And we see the classic example of Haridas Thakur. He was Namacharya, chanting 192 rounds every single day, and he was being whipped in 22 marketplaces. But he didn't become inimical to the Lord. He didn't say, oh my Lord, how come? I'm Namacharya, I'm chanting 192 rounds, and this is the treatment I'm getting whipped unfairly just because I'm chanting holy name. No, this was not the consciousness that Srila Haridas Thakur had. In fact, Srila Haridas Thakur had this same consciousness that Prabhupada is describing in relation to this verse of Lord Brahma, that yes, my Lord, I deserve worse. But you are so kind, you're giving me a token reaction. Thank you. I will continue to worship you. I'll continue to chant the holy name. And because of this, in fact, he was even praying to the Lord, please do not, harm, do not destroy these executioners. And it's explained, Shichak Mahaprabhu was so touched by Haridas Thakur's consciousness and heart that the Lord personally covered his back and took the beating on his own back. So this is the point, that it's not that we will not face difficulties and challenges, but the way we experience them is totally, totally different. Okay, then we come to the third verse. Nigama kalpatoro galitam phalam sukha mukhad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur aho rasika bhuvi pavuka. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanates from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated soul. So Nigama means the Vedic literatures. And the Vedic literatures are Kalpatara, they're desired trees. So how are the Vedic literatures desired trees? Desired trees, they fulfill any desire you have. If you have a mango tree, in the material world, the mango tree can only give you mangoes. And that also mango with skin and pulp. Whereas a kalpataro, a desired tree, can give you a mango with no seed and no skin, but it can give you anything else. It can give you properties as samosas, whatever you want, it can give you. So that is kalpataro. So the question I have now is, how is it that the Vedic scriptures are compared to a desired tree? So please share. If you want to unmute, please unmute. How are the Vedic literatures desire trees? It gives you Krishna. When you have Krishna, you have everything. So it gives you Krishna and you have everything. Well, in one sense, yes, okay. But still not the answer we're looking for. Ramkinga Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, it fulfills all your desires according to your specific desires from Karma Kanda all the way to Pasana Kanda, or even to the transcendental platform.
Very
it is
good.
it's like the what do you call it, Kalpa Vriksha tree.
Yes.
It can fulfill all your desires.
Correct. So Nalini Kanta Prabhu also said, contains all things noble by man, and Kritisha said they fulfill our thirst for knowledge of the Lord and other things. So as Ramkinga Prabhu said, the reason why Vedic scriptures is said to be a desired tree, because a desired tree can fulfill any of your desires. And in the material world, people have all varieties and all forms and shapes of desires, from totally gross to subtle to spiritual, okay, and everything in between, every form of desire. So the Vedas can fulfill every form of desire. Therefore, it's said to be a desire tree. The challenge is that if you have a desire tree and you have material desires, you will stay in the material world forever if you don't understand that those material desires are dangerous. Radhaman said, because you will be allowed to make sambandha with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by glorifying Scripture, Abhidaya, and the mercy of God, your desires will be fulfilled. The Vedas give different processes, different systems, different sacrifices, different limbs on how to fulfill your desires. If you want heavenly pleasures, you want material pleasures, you want spiritual desires to be fulfilled, there are different activities given. Different scriptures in different modes are given for different activities. So that's how the Vedas prescribe different processes for the individuals according to the desire. But Srimad Bhagavatam is Galitam. It's the mature fruit of this desire tree. When you have a tree, right, the tree is glorious, but the ultimate goal and perfection of the tree is its in fruit. Therefore, Bhagavatam is not just the fruit, but it's the ripened fruit, it's the mature fruit of the Vedic tree. It's giving you the actual thing that people are really desiring. What people really want is the absolute truth. Shri Krishna, the first verse, the connection to the absolute truth. That's the deep inner desire. But because of the modes of material nature and the false ego, that inner desire becomes reflected through the modes and through our mundane consciousness, through the mundane mind, through our false ego, and then gets reflected into this world, into all the different forms of material desires. But our deep, deep desire, inner desire, is really a connection with Krishna, pure loving service with Krishna. And this Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by a Sukha, by Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and therefore it's become even more sweet, more nectarean, amrita, nectarean. And this fruit, this mature fruit, is dravya, semi-solid and soft, and therefore easily swallowable. So the Bhagavatam, the knowledge of the Bhagavatam is easily digestible. In fact, for us, it's even more easily digestible. Why? Just like a mother bird. The mother bird, when she's feeding her chicks, she would take a worm, or she would take a fruit. She would peck on a fruit. And when she pecks on the fruit, she will eat the fruit and she will semi-digest the fruit. Then she'll take that semi-digested fruit and put that into the mouth of the chick. So like that, the acharyas have digested Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srila Prabhupada has digested Srimad Bhagavatam, and then Srila Prabhupada has now given us Srimad Bhagavatam. So Sukadeva Goswami, who gave Srimad Bhagavatam, which is even more sweeter coming from his lips, the acharyas have taken that, and Srila Prabhupada has taken that. The sweetness has increased, and the digestibility of it has increased. So therefore, by Prabhupada's purport, Bhaktivedanta purports, by his Bhagavatam, we can easily understand this subject matter. And therefore, samyutam, it is perfect in all respect. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about this question about rasa, which Mother Lash also asked. So I quoted here from Dasamula, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he describes there are two types of rasas, material and spiritual. When material anubhav, vibhav, sattvika, and vyabhichari bhavs brings material rati to the state of ras, it is only ras between material male and female bodies. This ras is insignificant, ephemeral, and perverse. Ephemeral means material. It is but a disgusting reflection of the spiritual ras. The pure jiva, liberated from his relation to the material, gross, and subtle bodies, is spiritual. His natural rati is also spiritual. This rati, this attraction, this affection that we have for Supreme Lord, when it becomes mixed as Staibhav mixes with the ingredients of spiritual Anubhav, Vibhav, Sattvika, and Vyabhichari Bhav, and attains a relishable nature, it becomes spiritual ras. And when the spiritual form of Krishna becomes the object of that ras, Krishna Bhakti ras arises. Krishna is supreme ras. Krishna's Maya Shakti distributes material ras, a shadow of real ras, to the jiva's adverse to Krishna in the material world. The fortunate person gives up this lower ras and surpasses even the insignificant ras of bliss in Brahman within himself, and taking support of the variegated pure ras belonging to the spiritual world, he attains the ocean of ras in the form of Krishna. So yes, there is ras in this material world, but the ras in the material world is perverted, and further than that, right? As Prabhupada mentions, it's generally between the same species. So Prabhupada in the purport says, such rasas are displayed between men and men and between animal and animal. There is no possibility of an exchange or rasa between a man and an animal, or between a man and any other species of living beings within this material world. The rasas are exchanged between members of the same species. But as far as the spirit souls are concerned, they are one qualitatively with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the rasas were originally exchanged between the spiritual living being and the Supreme Whole, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spirit soul exchange, the spiritual exchange or rasa is fully exhibited in the spiritual existence between the living beings and the Supreme Lord. So consider laughter. It's very difficult for you to have a laughter exchange, a laughter ras, comedy between an animal and a human being. An animal may do something funny and you may laugh. But rasa is two-way. Rasa is not one-way. Love is a two-way exchange, not a one-way exchange. So you can't have a laughter exchange with a dog, for example. Yes, the dog can do something and laugh, but you do something, just like you make funny face to a dog and see if he laughs, right? He may not laugh. In fact, if you go to some other dog, he may bite you because he may see your laugh, you're making funny face as you basically mocking him, so he may bite you. So therefore, it's not compatible. That's why generally the relationship, the ras, is generally between the same species, the exchanges. But even that exchanges that we have within this material world is perverted, it's limited, and it's perverse. It's insignificant. It's not the full manifestation, right? It's tinged. The real rasa that the exchange and the mellows we want to experience is only with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. So that's why it's not within other animals. There may be some aspects. So, for example, take Dasya ras, the ras of master and servant. Okay? We can have master and servant relationship between men and men, between man and woman. That relationship can be there. Okay? But we may say, well, I have a dog, and I'm the master, and the dog is a servant. But that may not necessarily be true, because it's not a complete manifestation of dasya ras. The dog is not completely submissive to you. The dog still has its own independence. The dog can, do his own thing, right? It's not like a master and servant in the true sense of dasya. Dasya means that the servant is totally subservient to the master and fulfills all his desires. If you find that you have a dog and you're taking the dog out for a walk, it seems like you the master. But then when the dog wants to do its number one, it stops and you stop. That's no more a master and servant. That master and servant has reversed now. You the servant and he's the master. He's telling you, wait, I need to do my number one. And therefore, you have to stop. So you can see it's perverted. It changes. It's temporary. Therefore, you can't have a complete form of complete rust between species. What to talk about other forms of relationship, right? Therefore, the rasas are generally between the same species. And Prabhupada is making that point that actually we are spiritual. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is spiritual. Therefore, that relationship can work. Otherwise, in fact, as spiritual beings, we cannot even have material rasas. The material rasas in this material world would be short-lived, non-fulfilling, and always nimitani viparitani. What we expect, we will get the reverse according to Bhagavad Gita. So that's the unfortunate situation, because we are spiritual beings. So actually the perfection is spirit to spirit, minute spirit to supreme spirit. All right. Then, in concluding these three verses, I like to share this point, and it's very important that we appreciate and understand this point very, very nicely. By associating with Srimad Bhagavatam, we will be given direction, instructions, guidance, examples, inspiration, motivation, warning in all facets of lives. Every aspect of our life will be molded by the Srimad Bhagavatam as we go through the Bhagavatam, verse by verse, canto by canto. Srimad Bhagavatam will cover every facet of our existence. Now, we generally, when we start associating with Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures, like Srimad Bhagavatam, we will develop a desire to become dear to Krishna. We want to become completely surrendered to Krishna. We want to become pure devotees. We want to become and follow the tenets and teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we develop a desire, we in the material world, and we develop a desire, we want to become Krishna conscious, perfectly Krishna conscious. So consider our beginning. Our beginning is that we have material desires and we have different activities, different portfolios, different things that are important to us. It may be our family, our spouse, our business, our entertainment, so many aspects of our existence, right? Different things that is important to us. And one of the things that will start to become important is Krishna in our lives, Krishna consciousness in our lives. But let's say we may have our spouse, and our spouse may not be Krishna conscious. So our spouse is not Krishna conscious, yet I am trying to be Krishna conscious. So my relationship with my spouse may not be like Hari Bol or Hare Krishna. Let's go to the temple. No, it may be I want to go to the movies. I want to go to I want to go party. I want to go to somebody's wedding. And your desire is I want to go to the temple. So you will need to manage your life in such a way that you don't destroy your spiritual life. At the same time, you are responsible and you act in a way that pleases Krishna. That Bhagavatam describes what's the best way to live in that environment. And it's a journey where you're becoming more and more Krishna conscious, ultimately coming to this point where you surrendered to Krishna. And in this example, on the right-hand side, you see that circle where you were inspired to be Krishna conscious was growing, ultimately molding itself into encompassing every aspect of your life. So now you find that your spouse, your business, your life, your family, your activities, everything is now imbued with Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Right? If in this case, you want to get married, you may get married to anyone. But in this case, if you want to get married, then you're going to find some devotee to get married. Your decision is always centered around Krishna. So that's our goal. We want to become completely Krishna conscious. Prabhupada says, mold your life in such a way that you become Krishna conscious. And it's a journey, right? So it's a very, very important journey. Now, as you're going through this journey, Maya is going to present many tricks. So consider you have different balloons. And these are different balloons of bhakti representing different activities, like chanting, worshipping, glorifying, serving, going to the temple, reading Bhagavatam, different activities that are there. And Maya is going to present a gift, a pin, to prick those balloons. Because Maya doesn't like what you're doing. She's going to test you. And your goal is to say no thanks. So you don't want to accept, while going on this journey, you don't accept the tricks of Maya. And Maya will pull you, especially in the beginning. Maya will pull you. But you want to be careful, you want to say no, and you want to continue on your journey. To be here is fine. You have your space, you have your spiritual space, you focus on Krishna. Even though others in your environment may not be God conscious, still you're able to be happy and practice Krishna consciousness. On this side, you are completely Krishna conscious with every facet of your life surrounding, evolving around Krishna, and therefore you're also happy. Never be in there as a riven cloud in between. Okay, that means you're stuck. You don't know, should I live like this or should I live like this? And you're swinging to and fro, you're swinging in between, not sure whether you want to be materially situated, spiritually situated, how to help the other aspects of your life to become Krishna conscious. You don't want to be in that situation. You always want to be moving in the right direction, having the proper guidance to keep becoming stronger in your Krishna consciousness. But it's a journey. You may have material desires, you may have material activities, the situation may not be favorable, but by continuing to practice the tenets that will be described in Srimad Bhagavatam, we will find slowly more and more we will become completely Krishna conscious, totally surrendered to Krishna, and in this way perfect our Krishna consciousness. So with that in mind, let us go through verses 4 and 8, where Srila Prabhupada will share in his Bhaktivedanta purports a few very important aspects that we need to imbibe in our Krishna conscious life. Text 114. Naimishe nimisha shetra rashaya shaunakadaya shatram swargaya lokaya sahasra samam asata. Once, in a holy place in the forest of Naimisaranya, great sages headed by the sage Shaunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. So now we are introduced to the setting. After the prelude, now we are introduced to the setting, which is in Naimisaranya, the forest of Naimisha. And this forest is known as Tapo Bhumi, where 88,000 sages came assembled to perform their austerities, their sacrifice. It's explained that this forest is generally used by sages to perform their austerities. So Naimisha is the forest known as Naimisaranya, and Animisha Kshetra, the spot which is usually a favorite of Vishnu, one who does not close his eyelids. Animisha. Nimisha means eyelids, just like the creation for Mahavishnu is one breath, one nimisha, quarter of a second. It's called nimisha. Animisha means non-blinking. So the blinking of an eye is nimisha, and animisha means no blinking. So Lord Vishnu is said to be, one of his names is animisha, one who does not blink his eyes. Therefore, if somebody says, I am God, just see if he blinks. If he blinks, means he's not God, because God does not blink. And we see Lord Jagannath. Lord Jagannath's got big wide eyes, doesn't have any eyelids. He does not blink. So why does Lord Jagannath not blink? Why does Lord Vishnu not blink? When somebody is attentive, they are completely absorbed and focused. Similarly, Krishna, Super Soul, Jagannath, here in this case, Lord Jagannath is so completely attentive and absorbed, constantly looking at his devotees, looking at his associates. He does not want to waste time blinking. Right? It's completely absorbed. Nothing passes the Supreme Lord. He does not blink, which means he'll not miss anything. Sometimes when you blink, you may miss something. So Krishna does not blink, which means he will never miss anything. Whatever you do, Krishna knows. He sees. Right? So this is Nimisha. So we're getting the setting, which is Sutta Goswami and the sages at Naimisaranya. This is chapter 1. And we're going to hear about Maharaj Parikshit, where Sukadev Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. And this is the last chapter 19 of the first canto. So what technically Srimad Bhagavatam starts when Maharaj Parikshit is inquiring from Sukadev Goswami, which is first canto, chapter 19 onwards. So from first canto, chapter 19, right up to 12th canto is really the discussion between Sukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. And there are obviously interdialogues between them. When Maharaj Parikshit asks a certain specific question, Sukadev Goswami would then share a dialogue between Krishna or between Narad Muni and other sages. Sutta Goswami was also sitting in the assembly when Maharaj Parikshit had the good fortune to meet Sukadev Goswami. Sutta Goswami was present in the assembly with Vyasadeva and others, and while Sutta Goswami was traveling through India, he came to the forest of Naimisaranya, and there the sages received Sutta Goswami, and this is the point where we are now, in the first canto, fourth chapter, where we now been introduced to the assembly of sages and Sutta Goswami. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, in the Vaya Viva Tantra, it is said that Brahma, the engineer of this particular universe, contemplated a great wheel which could enclose the universe. The hub of this great wheel, circle, was fixed at a particular place known as Naimisaranya. Similarly, there is another reference in the forest to the forest of Naimisaranya in the Vara Purana, where it is stated that by performance of sacrifice at this place, the strength of the demonic people is curtailed. Thus, Brahmanas prefer Naimisaranya for such sacrificial performances. So the sages here, they wanted to perform welfare for Kali Yuga. At the beginning of Kali Yuga, they decided that we can see the unfortunate situation of Kali Yuga, and we need to perform this sacrifice to reduce the impact of the strength of demonic people. This is the power of performing sacrifices at places like Naimisaranya. Then Srila Prabhupada continues, the devotees of Lord Vishnu offer all kinds of sacrifices for his pleasure. The devotees are always attached to the service of the Lord, whereas fallen souls are attached to the pleasures of the material existence. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that anything performed in the material world for any reason other than for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu causes further bondage for the performer. It is enjoined, therefore, that all acts must be performed sacrificially for the satisfaction of Vishnu and his devotees. This will bring everyone peace and prosperity. So Prabhupada is giving the formula for peace and prosperity. And here is you could say like a sutra, right? That Prabhupada is quoting from Bhagavad Gita, from the 3rd chapter, that work should be done for the pleasure of Vishnu. So anything performed in the material world, anything, consider brushing your teeth, consider working, consider raising your family, anything. If it's performed in this world for any reason other than the pleasure of Lord Vishnu, that causes further bondage. If you understand this science, this law, you will have peace and prosperity. If you transgress this law, you will be distressed and you will lack prosperity. My question, I gave you the example of brushing your teeth. So what does brushing your teeth got to do with pleasing Vishnu, pleasing Krishna? If I go to the temple, I take some fresh flowers, scented flowers, and I offer it for the pleasure of Krishna, that is for Krishna's pleasure. Brushing my teeth, what does that got to do with the pleasure of Krishna? Because here it's explained, if I don't brush my teeth for the pleasure of Krishna, I'm going to be bound. Do I want to be bound? No. So then I should stop brushing, because I can't do that for the pleasure of Krishna. Or can I? So anyone would like to share? What does brushing have to do with Krishna? Or how can you connect it to Krishna? How can you how can you do it for the pleasure of Krishna? Tanuja?
You can cleanse your mouth for chanting the Lord's holy name. Can you hear me, Prabhu? Can you hear me now, Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
Sorry, I had my Yes, okay. My volume was off. You can say again.
I said it's a cleansing of your mouth to chant the Lord's holy name.
Very good. Yes. Or taking, as others have said, to glorify the Supreme, you need to be clean. I'm the servant of Krishna. He owns me. Clean the body to serve Krishna. Very good. Cleanliness next to godliness. Therefore, our body is also not ours. It's granted by Lord Vishnu and it is therefore not ours. Very good. The form of cleansing, yes. Cleansing yourself before you present yourself to Krishna. We conditioned souls, we need to cleanse them. Cleanse the material, yes. Honor Krishna Prasad, very good. So all of you have beautifully shared, okay, that's the reason. It's because there's a connection to Krishna, Prasadam. As soon as you connect it to anything connected to Krishna, that becomes bhakti. Okay, that becomes liberating. And that's the beauty. As soon as you take every single activity that you are engaged in and you somehow connect that to Krishna, indirectly or directly, that becomes now bhakti. And that liberates you. And that's how you will eventually experience peace and prosperity. And your material karma will cease to exist. So therefore, if we always eat prasad, which means I always brush my teeth, none of those activities will bind me. And in fact, those activities will liberate me because it is for the pleasure of Krishna. And the sages, the devotees, they performing sacrifice only for the pleasure of the Lord, his devotees, and the spiritual master, Hari Guru Vaishnav Bhagavata Gita, and for Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. The great sages are always anxious to do good to the people in general. And as such, the sages headed by Shonaka and others assembled at this holy place of Naimisaranya with a program of performing a great and continuous chain of sacrificial ceremonies. Forgetful men do not know the right path for peace and prosperity. However, the sages know it well, and therefore, for the good of all men, they are always anxious to perform acts which may bring about peace in the world. They are sincere friends to all living entities, and at the risk of great personal inconvenience, they are always engaged in service of the Lord for the good of all people. So the pure devotees of the Lord, the great sages, they are not only concerned about themselves. Just like the Bhajanandis, they would go into the forest and they would stay there and be interested in their own salvation. But the Gostinandis, those who go out into the world, they are interested in the welfare of all living entities. And we see the classic example in our experience, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada gave up, sacrificed his place in Vrindavan, and an elderly age, he left Vrindavan to give people Srimad Bhagavatam, the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, the knowledge of the absolute truth. So they go through all personal inconvenience and risk to help people. This is the greatest welfare work. They are not selfish. Why? Because they know that that's the only way we can be peaceful and prosperous. When we connect ourselves to Krishna, we will be peaceful and prosperous. We don't need to artificially try to survive separately from Krishna. If you do that, you will never be happy. It's an incompatible situation to be separated from Krishna. That's why people in this world struggle. Prabhupada said, hard struggle for survival in this world. Now we are struggling hard because we have been separated. So now what we need to do is understand that we need to start connecting with Krishna, and slowly there'll be a transition. Prabhupada says, yes, in a second you can change your situation. But unfortunately, our desire is not that strong. So if we associate, we hear, we chant, we engage in devotional service, that desire will become stronger and stronger and stronger, and we will become more and more connected. It's like if you, have a bad Wi-Fi connection. Sometimes your phone, your network, cell phone, as you're driving or you're moving, you find that your network connection is weak. So then you change, you move place, you move and see, okay, it's stronger here, etc. So like that, we need to move in a way that gives us a strong and stronger connection to Krishna. Move away from weak signals and go towards where we have stronger signals to Krishna. In that way, we can become more and stronger. And the pure devotees, they will sacrifice themselves in different ways so that they can give all the living entities the opportunity to connect with Krishna. And then Prabhupada concludes, similarly, human society, when it is detached from the personality of God, like detached branches and leaves, is not capable of being watered. And one attempting to do so is simply wasting his energy and resources. And that's so true. No matter what you do in this material world, no matter what people are doing in this material world, if what they do is not for connecting people to Krishna or for people who are connected to Krishna, then whatever they do is a waste of energy and resources. Just like that branch that's detached. Krishna is the root. So everyone that's connected, every part of the tree that's connected to the root, if you water the root, all the parts of that tree become nourished. If we share Krishna consciousness with people who are Krishna conscious, they benefit. We benefit, they benefit. Those who are detached from the tree of Krishna or the root, like a broken twig or broken branch, if you pour water on the root, that broken branch is not getting watered because it is separated. Therefore, no matter what people do to help that branch, it's going to be a waste because that branch is not connected to the Supreme. Your energy is going to be wasted. Like in the material world, people may come up with so many inventions. All the energy and effort that they have put in to come up with different inventions, if those inventions are not used in the service of Krishna, it is total waste of time. Why? Because the material is temporary and time will destroy everything. So therefore, it's a waste of time. Yes, there may be some material piety and material gain, but material piety and material gain is also temporary. Therefore, again, wasting of energy and resource. That is why Prabhupada was so expert to use everything in the service of Krishna, thereby engaging those people that have used energy and resource in inventing utilities so that they can be engaged and give blessings and benefit to them. Like now we're using technology to propagate Krishna consciousness, to share Krishna consciousness, share the Bhagavatam and the philosophy of Bhagavatam, which means that all the people connected to this act, the company that created this computer, the company that, or the people that engineered internet, all the tools that we are using, the phone, etc. Everyone is getting bhakti unmukhi sukriti, devotional credits, because we are using what they've created in Krishna's service. Prabhupada says the modern materialistic society is detached from its relationship to the Supreme Lord, and all its plans, which are being made by atheistic leaders, are sure to be baffled at every step, yet they do not wake up to this. And finally, Prabhupada concludes, in this age, the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord is the prescribed method for waking up. The ways and means are most scientifically presented by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the intelligent persons may take advantage of his teachings in order to bring about real peace and prosperity. Srimad Bhagavatam is also presented for the same purpose, and this will be explained more specifically later in the text. So the greatest act of sacrifice for us in this age is chanting the holy names of the Lord. We should sacrifice. Sacrifice means I'm giving something to engage in an activity or get something. So I'm sacrificing my time. We should sacrifice our time for hearing and chanting the holy names of Krishna. Ultimately, it's not even your time. According to the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, everything belongs to Krishna. I belong to Krishna, this body belongs to Krishna, material energy, material resources, material ability, time, everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, I should be using everything for his pleasure because he is the owner and master of everything. If we have that consciousness and we apply ourselves in that way by chanting the holy name, we can achieve perfection. We can wake up. Jiv Jago, Gaura Chandrabo. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, wake up, sleeping souls, wake up, sleeping souls. And what's the best way of waking up? Chanting the holy names, using our tongue and our ears. And we'll see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this point about the holy name, glorifying the Lord, will be in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, throughout to the middle of the Bhagavatam, through the pastime of Ajamil, and right through the end of the Bhagavatam. Then verse 5, Ta ekada tu munaya pratar huta hutag naya satkritam sutam ashinam Paprachur idam adarat. One day after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. So here it's explained, Tad eka tu munayo pratar huta, at the morning, after finishing their morning duties. And Prabhupada immediately starts the purport by saying, morning is the best time to hold spiritual services. The great sages offered the speaker of the Bhagavatam an elevated seat of respect called the Vyasasan, or the seat of Srila Vyasadeva. So morning is the best time for spiritual practices. If we want to practice spiritual life, if we're serious about our spiritual life, we must get up early in the morning before the sun rises, at least 1.5 hours before the sunrise, Brahma Muhurta period. If we can train ourselves to get up 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock every single day, it will be the best thing we could do for our own spiritual practice. Why? Because that time is most auspicious. At that time, the modes are subdued. The mode of Suddha Sattva and goodness is more prevalent. At that time, we have, nobody's engaging us in material activities. We have all that time to focus for the pleasure of Krishna. So waking up, we find even materially successful people take advantage of trying to get up early. They use the morning hours for their material prosperity activities. But as devotees, our morning time is the best. And we should use this time to practice spiritual life, to chant our rounds before we start to engage in relation to the material world. And if we do this, Prabhupada said, if you chant your rounds before 10 a.m., there will be no anxiety. So ideally, we should cultivate a practice. And that would mean, taking your meal, not heavy meals in the evening. Ideally, last meal before 6 o'clock or around that. So not eating heavy, taking rest early by 9 o'clock, etc. So one has to adjust one's life in such a way that early to bed, early to rise. Right? That's the principle. And if we do that, then we'll be able to take advantage of the morning hours to practice spiritual life, to chant, to read, to associate with Krishna, and this will shield us and help us tremendously in our spiritual practice. We get great strength, great spiritual strength through the morning program. Okay? We should never minimize or underestimate the power of the morning program. It is extremely important. Prabhupada says in one purport that there is no question of spiritual life if one does not get up in the morning and have a morning program according to one's means. So very, very important. Then Prabhupada continues, and all other preceptors, or Srila Vyasadeva is the original spiritual preceptor for all men, and all other preceptors are considered to be his representatives. A representative is one who can exactly present the viewpoint of Srila Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva impregnated the message of Bhagavatam onto Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and Sutta Goswami heard it from him, Srila Sukadeva Goswami. And Sutta Goswami heard it from him, Srila Sukadeva Goswami. All bona fide representatives of Srila Vyasadeva in the chain of disciplic succession are to be understood to be Goswamis. These Goswamis restrain all their senses and they stick to the path made by the previous acharyas. The Goswamis do not deliver lectures on the Bhagavatam capriciously. Rather, they execute their service most carefully, following their predecessors who delivered the spiritual message unbroken to them. So very, very key also here Prabhupada is making the point that Goswami means restraining all senses and sticking to the path of the acharyas. We need to follow Srila Prabhupada as our acharya in our life, and by following Srila Prabhupada, by following his guidance, we will be guided perfectly to the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should not use our own um, material mind and consciousness to create our own paths. The path has already been laid out by the acharyas, given to us, coming through Srila Prabhupada, and therefore, if we sincerely follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions through his purports and his instructions, we will be safe on this path of bhakti. Those who listen to the Bhagavatam may put questions to the speaker in order to elicit the clear meaning, but this should not be done in a challenging spirit. One must submit questions with a great regard for the speaker and the subject matter. This is also the way recommended in Bhagavad Gita. One must learn transcendental subject by submissive oral reception from the right sources. Therefore, these sages address the speaker Sutta Goswami with great respect. So the sages could understand Sutta Goswami was representing Srila Vyasadeva. He was learned, as we're going to hear, and therefore they respected him and they submissively inquired from him. Submissive oral reception is important. Yes, you can question, but not with a challenging spirit. Then text 6, Rishaya Uchu Tvaya Kalu Puranani Seti Hasani Charnaga Akyatanyapya Aditani Dharma Shastrani Yanyuta. The sages said, respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all scriptures, famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. Prabhupada says, Goswami or bona fide representative of Srila Vyasadeva must be free from all kinds of vices. The four major vices of Kali Yuga are illicit connection with women, animal slaughter, intoxication, speculative gambling of all sorts. A Goswami must be free from all these vices before he can dare to sit on the Vyasasana. So this is a standard, right? Anyone who's representing Srila Vyasadeva has to be free from all kinds of vices. Now, generally, for example, I'm, presenting what Srila Prabhupada is presenting. I am representing Srila Prabhupada, yet I may not be perfect. And Prabhupada addressed this point that somebody who's an expert technician, if he's got an apprentice, somebody's helping him, even though that student may not be perfect, but if he follows the example of the expert technician, hand me this screwdriver, right, cut this wire, fix this wire, that means that relationship or that activity is perfect because he's following, even though he's not perfect and even though he has defects, but he's following the advice of the technician perfectly. Similarly, in our case also, uh, I may not be perfect, but I'm simply trying to present the message of Srila Prabhupada, which is perfect. Prabhupada is perfect. He's giving perfect knowledge through his Bhaktivedanta purports and the Bhagavatam, which is perfect, coming from the perfect source. Therefore, if we simply present the knowledge like a postman, without interfering, without adding or changing, then it has perfect effect. And of all the vices, these four vices are most important to avoid. Illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, meat eating. They are destructive. Prabhupada says these four, if you follow them, you become sinless. Then one can actually practice the process of bhakti. So it's very, very important that we practice in the beginning. We apply ourselves and practice to avoid these four major obstacles on the path of Krishna consciousness. And as we practice more and more and become more apt at the practice of devotional service, then these things will become natural to avoid. Okay, it will not. We will not have to even think about it, because by the power of practice and the power of devotional service, we will become more and more stronger and strengthened, and our taste will now become directed towards Krishna instead of these different sinful activities. No one should be allowed to sit on the Vyasasan who is not spotless in character and who is not freed from the above mentioned vices. He not only should be freed from such vices, but must also be well versed in all revealed scriptures in the Vedas. The Puranas are also parts of the Vedas, and histories like Mahabharata, Ramayana are also part of the Vedas. The Acharyas and Goswami must be well acquainted with all these literatures. And we see Prabhupada, who's presenting Srila Vyasadev's message, was perfectly well versed in all these scriptures. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them. One can assimilate the knowledge of revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. Hearing is called Shravana, and explaining is called Kirtana. The two processes of Shravana and Kirtana are of primary importance to progressive spiritual life. Only one who has properly grasped the transcendental knowledge from the right source by submissive hearing can properly explain the subject. So here, a very, very important point Prabhupada is making. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them. And that is why I also encourage, when we have a feedback session or there's a question, it's important to share. Why? Because you hearing, let's say you're reading, then when you read something, it's important that you share. When you share with someone, you can share your realization, share what's interesting. Anything that you read in Krishna consciousness, you hear, always have a friend or two to share with. I, arrange these types of sessions so that I can share for my own benefit. I can read, I can try to assimilate, and then I can share. Why? Because this is one of the instructions. Prabhupada says doing this is actually more important than just reading. Now, yes, we may not all share in the way I am doing, but you can still share with at least one or two people, your friends. Therefore, I made it, I made a point of letting you know to find someone, find a accountable partner, find someone that you can share what you read, what you heard, whether it's a lecture of Srila Prabhupada, a purport of Srila Prabhupada, some Krishna conscious point, right? In this way, we always associate, it pleases Krishna, associate around Krishna, it pleases Krishna when you share and your realizations this way, and it allows you to reinforce the point. It's called maranam, contemplating. So we want to shravanam, hear, then kirtanam, right? And then contemplation, maranam. You can also contemplate. When you hear this point and you're showering, think of the point. Yeah, what does the first verse actually mean in my life? Is it relative? Is it relevant? How is these verses relevant in my life? That's maranam, very important to contemplate. That way the subject becomes more assimilated, okay? Becomes part of your psyche, becomes part of your nature. In fact, the soul, our selves, Satchit Ananda, we are made of knowledge. So when you marana, when you contemplate, what you're really doing is you are reviving that aspect of your nature which is Sat, Chit, Ananda. That Chit, which is knowledge, which is the middle part, as you contemplate, will revive your eternality and your bliss in relation to Krishna. So very, very important. In relation to these aspects, Prabhupada, one time, in a kitchen, Prabhupada had, in his own handwriting, had written 4 statements showing priority of the process of devotional service. First, Prabhupada wrote health, and this was in the early days, because the devotees, they were so absorbed in spreading Krishna consciousness, even at the cost of their health. They will, it's like somebody's sick, don't worry, Prabhupada, don't worry, Prabhupada, you're not your body, your spirit soul. They wouldn't bother. So they were negligent to some degree in that aspect. So Prabhupada, to encourage them, Prabhupada wrote in his own handwriting that the priority, we should always understand the priority. And the priority is health first, then sadhana, then service, then reading, in that sequence. Right? And in this way, by following that sequence, being absorbed, and in this way we can progress strength by strength. Text 7. Yani Veda Vidam Shreshto Bhagavan Badarayana Anyecha Munayo Sutta Para Vara Vidu. Being the eldest learned Vedantas, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of the Vedas, who is the incarnation of Godhead. Being the eldest of the Vedantas, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. Prabhupada writes, Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary on Brahma Sutra or the Badarayana Vedanta Sutra. It is called natural commentary. It is called natural because Vyasadeva is author of both the Vedanta Sutra and Srimad Bhagavatam, or the essence of the Vedic literatures. Besides Vyasadeva, there are other sages who are also authors of the six different philosophical systems, namely Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, and Ashtavakra. Theism is explained completely in the Vedanta Sutra, whereas in the other systems of philosophical speculations, practically no mention is given to the ultimate cause of all causes. One can sit on the Vyasasana only after being conversant in all systems of philosophy, so that one can present fully the theistic views of the Bhagavatam in defiance of all other systems. Srila Sutta Goswami was the proper teacher, and therefore the sages at Naimisaranya elevated him to the Vyasasana. Srila Vyasadeva is designated herein as the personality of God because he is the authorized, empowered incarnation. So Srila Vyasadeva is a jiva, but he's a jiva that's empowered. Shakti Vesh is empowered with the literary potency of the Supreme Lord to pen down the Vedas. Therefore, he's also said to be Shakti Vesh Avatar, no different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the six systems of knowledge, Prabhupada says, of the six, only Srila Vyasadev's Vedanta Sutra is theistic, all others are practically atheistic. And in the 10th canto, chapter 87, verse 25, there's this summary where it says, of the six orthodox philosophies of Vedic tradition, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. Only the Vedanta or Badarayana Vyas is free of error, and even that only as properly explained by the bona fide Vaishnavacharyas. Each of the six schools, nonetheless, makes some practical contribution to Vedic education. Atheistic Sankhya explained the evolution of natural elements from subtle to gross. Patanjali's yoga described the eightfold method of meditation. Nyaya sets forth the techniques of logic. Vaisheshika considers the basic metaphysical categories of reality. And Mimamsa established the standard tools of scriptural interpretation. Apart from these six, there are also more deviant philosophies of the Buddhists, Jains, and Charvakas, whose theories of voidism and materialism deny the spiritual integrity of the eternal soul. So when Srila Vyasadeva is stating Dharma Projitikaitava, that Srimad Bhagavatam is rejecting all these other philosophies and activities, it's also rejecting all these other atheistic teachings. And it's establishing, it's giving, for example, it will give logic, it will give yoga, but it will give that only to show the glory of pure devotional service. And finally, the last verse for today. Vetatvam somya tat sarvam tatvatastad anugrahat bruyu snigdasya shishyasya gurovo guyamapyuta. And because you are submissive, your spiritual master have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. So the sages have received Sutta Goswami appropriately, and they glorified some of his qualities, and they are requesting him now to tell them according to their inquiries. They're going to now from 9 to 23, which we're going to cover next week. We're going to hear about their inquiries. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting his sincere blessings. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has sung in his famous 8th stanza on the spiritual master as follows: I offer my respectful obedience unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Only by his satisfaction can one please the personality of Godhead, and when he is dissatisfied, there is only havoc on the spiritual realization, on the path of spiritual realization. It is essential, therefore, that a disciple be very much obedient and submissive to the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Sudha Goswami fulfilled these qualifications as a disciple, and therefore he was endowed with all favor by his learned and self-realized spiritual masters such as Srila Vyasadeva and others. The sages of Naimisaranya were confident that Srila Sudha Goswami was bona fide, and therefore they were anxious to hear from him. So Srila Prabhupada gives us another sutra. The secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master. And for us, Srila Prabhupada is the founder acharya, the preeminent Shiksha Guru in our life, as the guiding acharya and the principle that he has taught us. We should imbibe that if we simply try to please Srila Prabhupada in our sincere efforts and endeavor, in trying to follow his examples, trying to follow his teachings, we will please him most definitely. And by pleasing him, we will please Krishna. We find an example of Mugrari the hunter. Simply by pleasing his spiritual master Narad Muni, he had a complete transformation, that he was from half killing animals, he didn't even want to kill an ant. So this is a transformation that can happen by the blessings of the pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas. Simply following their footsteps, we can achieve perfection. And concluding, last slide, this is just a summary between verses 6 and 8 of the qualities that the assembled sages glorified Sutta Goswami. He was Anaga, freed from all vice; Aditani, well versed in scripture, Purana histories; Akyatani, and also able to explain them; Veda Vidam, elders learned Vedantas; Shrestha, know the knowledge of Vyasadeva and other sages; Somya, gentle, pure, and simple; Sigdasya, you were submissive, therefore your gurus endowed you with favors. So these qualities are very, very important. And these are some of the qualities. As we go through the Bhagavatam, more and more of these qualities will be shared. Qualities of the speaker, qualities of the hearers, qualities of a disciple, qualities of those who are practicing spiritual life, those who are perfect. For us, we need to imbibe many of these qualities, especially gentle, pure, and simple, somya. By cultivating the qualities in the mode of goodness, we please Krishna. Ultimately, when we practice pure devotional service, when we practice devotional service, we will develop all the wonderful qualities of the demigods, as the Vedas explain. Srila Prabhupada was the embodiment of all these auspicious, glorious qualities. One devotee called Jai Gaurangai from Mexico, he shares a wonderful pastime of how he was in Mexico and Srila Prabhupada was there, and he decided, his father was a very proud, aristocratic, wealthy person staying in Beverly Hills, and his father didn't appreciate that, his son being a devotee, because he felt that all the devotees are just hippies. And Jai Gauranga invited his father to come and meet Srila Prabhupada. So he reluctantly accepted the invitation. He, came with suit and tie, dressed very proud, very, it was like, you could say, had this arrogant demeanor about him. And anyway, he reluctantly accepted. So at least his son Jai Gauranga was happy that his father was coming to see Srila Prabhupada. They came to the temple, and the devotees were gathered there having kirtan. So Jai Gauranga asked his father, who was, he had to take his shoes out, he didn't like that. And then he was standing there with a suit and, very proud, head up, waiting to see what's going to happen. So his son asked him, asked his father, why don't you chant? There's the mantra. Why don't you chant? And his father just was not interested. Reluctantly, he just ignored. He said, no, I'm not interested. So anyway, they waited. All of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada's room opened up. And in fact, Prabhupada was leaving that day. And Jai Gauranga Prabhu didn't know that Prabhupada was leaving. So therefore, the devotees were waiting to receive Srila Prabhupada on his way out. Srila Prabhupada, as soon as the door opened and Prabhupada came, and we see Prabhupada have this very regal look, with his head tilted up in the sky, a very regal look that Prabhupada has. All the devotees, when they saw Srila Prabhupada, they all bow down, offer their obeisances. And Jai Gauranga's father, when he saw Srila Prabhupada, he could not help himself but also bow down. So he also went to the ground. Prabhupada came right next to Jai Gauranga and his father, paused, looked at both of them, and he noticed the semblance. He noticed that, okay, this looks like father and son. And Jai Gauranga didn't say anything. He didn't introduce the father. He just looked at Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gave him a huge smile and then walked and left. Then Jai Gauranga, later on, he asked his father, why did you offer obeisances to Srila Prabhupada? Because he was proud, puffed up, and had this arrogant demeanor. Didn't want to offer obeisances or chant Hare Krishna, but he did that when he saw Prabhupada. And his father told Jai Gauranga that Srila Prabhupada, he is no ordinary man. He commanded respect because he was in a mood of goodness, and he is no ordinary man. So this was the response. Very amazing response. He commanded respect. Why did Srila Prabhupada command respect and not demand it? He commanded it because of the qualities that he embodied. And the qualities that he embodied, like Sutta Goswami, gentle, pure, simple, completely Krishna conscious. It's only because of them accepting wholeheartedly, completely the Supreme Absolute Truth, surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, mind, body, and words. And therefore, they commanded respect and not demanded respect. So, concluding, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments anyone has? There's one or two which I will answer. I will just stop sharing. Dear Prabhu, Sukadeva Goswami heard Srimad Bhagavatam whilst in the womb of his mother, Kakadu. Can you elaborate this and the holy significance? In fact, we will be covering that. The pastime of Vyasadeva and Sukadeva Goswami will be in the first canto. So when we get there, we will cover that. Thank you very much for your comments. Right, any other questions or comments anyone have? Sorry, we just went a little over time today, 15 minutes, but that's okay. All right, no other questions? Thank you. Then we shall end here. And next week, please read verse till the end of the chapter from verses 9 to 23. So you have quite a bit to read. Start reading today or tomorrow, and also share with your friends. Let's say, Hare Krishna, what is the difference between a great sage, rishi, a brahmana? How are these title gets bestowed? Yes, there are different levels. So you'll find, for example, there's sages, rishis, brahmanas. In fact, there's a purport where Srila Prabhupada describes. I'll try to find that purport for you. There's technicalities in terms of what they know, what processes they follow, and what levels they are. Right? So, for example, there's a muni and there's a rishi. A rishi generally would receive knowledge, understand that, and share that, like a sage. A muni, who is a technical term used for someone who needs to create his own philosophy. It's called a Muni. If he doesn't create his own philosophy, own speculation, he's not a Muni. Okay? So like that, there are different, in the Vedas, there are different statements or categories of these different sages. Right? And according to that different categories, they are classified. Like you get, for example, certain saintly persons are involved in karma kanda sections. Certain saintly persons are involved simply in austerities. Certain saintly persons are involved in on the bhakti path. And because of that, they would get different statements. Where is Naimisaranya? Naimisaranya is North India from the map. You can just Google, ask Guru Google. You'll see Guru Google will show you. In fact, I want to put a picture of the map where Naimisaranya is. But if you just Google Guru, ask Google Guru, he'll show you exactly where it is. It's in the northern part of India. And there is a temple. It's not a ISKCON temple, but there's arts, temples there, and forest is still there. You can still go visit Naimisaranya even today. How can we, Steve said, how can we get rid of the desires to commit sinful activities? You can get rid of the desire in different ways. One is if you understand the detrimental nature of the desire, that if I really do this, it's destroying me more and more. So the more you understand the danger, the more you can warn yourself and try to avoid getting trapped. One way. The other way is good association. By strong association, you can overpower these weak or material desires. Also, be aware, right? Be conscious. As soon as you are conscious that, oh, I'm desiring these sinful activities or these sinful desires, right? You need to have a way, a process to divert your attention. So therefore, Prabhupada says, for example, chant Hare Krishna. As soon as you have material desires, you need to pause, put your hand in a bead bag, chant Hare Krishna. I usually give the example. Say you conscious. So it's always good to be conscious. Monitor yourself. Always be vigilant of your thoughts. Be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of your desires. Because you're not your desires. You're not your mind. Therefore, you are aware. You can be aware of these things. Now, when you're aware of them, note when they come. Note what triggers them. So if you note what triggers them, you can also avoid the triggers. Let's say every Wednesday, 7 o'clock, if there was no COVID, you get a certain trigger that triggers your sinful desires. So then you can phone your friend and tell him, let's, Wednesday, every Wednesday, can we go to the temple for Gaur Arati? So in this way, you know when the trigger is, you know that during that trigger, there's Gaur Arati at the temple. So now you make arrangements to try to divert your attention to the Lord. And yes, while you're at the temple, you may be thinking of your sinful desires and sinful activities in the beginning. As you get more purified, it will leave you. Right? So those are a few ways. One is generally strong association, strengthen your sadhana, chant more attentively, good association, eating Krishna Prasad. These are some ways. Knowing the danger, right? Having someone to monitor you, be accountable to someone. These are some ways you can try to avoid falling prey to material desires. And ultimately, sincerely praying to Krishna and following the path of bhakti nicely. Over time, you'll find your material desires becoming purified. You can actually make a list of all your sinful desires and material sinful activities and give them a rating, 1 to 10. How strong are they? And you'll see some of them, by you sincerely practicing, they'll just fall away. Some will be quickly, some will take time. Okay, but guaranteed, if you sincerely practice nicely the practice of Krishna consciousness with good association, strong sadhana, you will find that every single material desire will be extinguished, bar none. every single one of them. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Sham says, is there only one spiritual ras, Staibhav? No, there are 12, right? So in Nectar Devotion, or you can read, if you want a summary study, read Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. But in Nectar Devotion, they cover the 5 primary and 7 secondary. And then there's the different levels. Staibhav is basically the rasa that's part of your eternal constitutional nature in relation to Krishna. So, for example, we all have an eternal relationship, either as a servant, as a friend, as a parent, or as a lover, or neutral. Okay. And let's say if I have an eternal relationship with Krishna as a friend, then that's my Staibhav, Sakyaras. And all other rasas then are, or all other exchanges work around Staibhav. Staibhav means that ras that is stable, always there, always fixed. Okay, thank you. Pleasure. Ramkinger Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. So the government also impose what we call sin tax.
Okay.
So we want to enjoy our senses, especially daru,
Yes.
and other things.
Correct.
Then they hit you hard in the pocket.
Correct.
So you get a punch.
Yes.
So the laws of material nature also acts like that. If we flout the 4 sinful activities, meat eating, gambling, intoxication, and illicit sex. So through knowledge and good association, as you said.
Yes, very good.
So that's the best way to understand.
100%, yes. And the sometimes you can bypass the syntax, right? But you can never bypass Krishna's laws. You're either going to suffer because it's going to come out as medicine. Oh, Prabhu, how many medicines are you taking? You must know, if you're taking medicines, you are taking medicines for your sins. And you will get punished. Nectar Devotion describes you get punished 2 ways. If you commit a sinful activity, you get punished 2 ways. One is your sinful desire increase, and you're going to suffer, you're going to go to hell and get due punishment. Right? So you're going to get, and there may be some material ramification. You cannot avoid it. If you don't want to suffer, be conscious and try to avoid. Remember, only you have control of your desires and your actions, no one else. It requires responsibility, it requires attention, and requires ownership. As soon as you take ownership to say, I need to stop, yes, you will require good association and guidance without fail. Without association, you will not advance. You will not be able to overpower. The only thing that triggers a desire, whether material or spiritual, is association. We all have bad material desires stored in our heart since time immemorial. Every single one of us. I normally, in a class, I normally ask devotees, how many of us have a desire to eat stool? And nobody responds and say, we all have desire to eat stool. Why? Because we all had a hog body in our lives, in our previous lives, one of the lives. To come to a human form means you've gone through what, 8,400,000. We may have gone through a few hog species. Therefore, we all had a desire to eat stool. That desire is still there. Okay? If we haven't purified it through the process of bhakti, it's still there. If you get the wrong association, that desire to eat stool may come back. So therefore, before all your material desires manifest, we should get good association, proper guidance, practice nicely, and slowly burn all these desires out. That's what the process of bhakti does, and that's what we're going to hear in the Bhagavatam. Nashtra prayasho bhadresho. All abhadra, all inauspiciousness things in the heart will become nashtra prayasho, will become destroyed. And Prabhupada says, or in the verse it says, almost completely. When we get there, we will share that and describe that. How does the hub of the great circle as contemplated by Lord Brahma relate to the forest of Naimisaranya? So the forest of Naimisaranya is the hub, is the center of the universe. Okay, so from a creation, from a universal creation perspective, if you take the whole universe, the Naimisaranya is like the hub of the wheel. Now, when Prabhupada was in Mayapur, Prabhupada said he's installing the deities of Lord Chaitanya in the center of the universe. Prabhupada also took Mayapur as the center of the universe. Right? But generally, from a structural perspective, when Lord Brahma is creating the universe, he's creating it with this in mind, that the center, from top to bottom, the center is Naimisaranya. So therefore, in a structural perspective, it holds some significance. And then obviously, because sages always perform austerities there, then it has significance. All right. Thank you very much for all your questions. If there's any other questions, we will take that next week. Thank you very much for your kind association and all your favorable comments. Please share with others. As we said, Prabhupada said to hear and share.